Hey everybody, welcome to the Interstate Batteries ProClinic webinar on testing and charging. We'll start in just a minute as we wait for some more folks to join us. While we're waiting, I will let you know some housekeeping things. We will record this webinar if you need to come back to it and refer to any part of it, or if you want to forward it to somebody who maybe wasn't able to attend. We always welcome anybody to attend and check these out. So let's see what else. Go ahead and open up the Q&A button. If you scroll down to the bottom of your Zoom window, you should see a toolbar down there and you'll see one that says Q&A. If you'll open that up, we will take questions as we go. And those, if we can't get to all of them during the webinar, we're gonna have Jeff and Gail answer those questions toward the end. You can also feel free to talk to each other in chat or talk to us, but the questions are we're going to be looking at the Q&A window to see what questions you have. So if you have questions, that's the place to put them. This one's going to be a little bit shorter format. We're trying something out here to see if this shorter format is something that you like. It's going to be about 15-20 minutes worth of conversation and presentation, and then 10 to 15 minutes, however long you want to go of live Q&A. So have your questions ready and we'll be ready to answer them. All right. So we'll wait just a minute and we'll get started as more people are joining the conversation here. All right, we already have 78 people on. That's nice. While we wait, go ahead and knock this first one out. Jeff, what's the best way to bring back a dead AGM battery?
What's the best way? Don't make it dead.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of ways. I mean, the old school method is taking a known good battery, flooded battery, and put it in parallel. And then you start charging it with a charger. Once it comes back up to where it's actually putting some juice back into it, you can transfer over and just put it back on the regular charger by itself. So that's the old school. There are chargers out there that can bring back deeply discharged AGM batteries. They are a little bit more costly. However, they do work, and it pulsates to where it doesn't create a lot of heat, because as those batteries have gotten discharged, there's a lot of resistance comes into play. And what that means is heat. So these are designed a little bit different to be able to pulsate it to where it's not going to have that much of an increase on temperature.
All right. Way to kick it off with a good question, Paul.
Bam. That's how you do it.
Great.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, anybody else have questions, put those in the Q&A. We'll get them covered either during the webinar or shortly after. But I'm going to go ahead and start us off again. My name is Kyle Friedel with our ProClinic team. We've got Jeff and Gail here, along with Mike Chermak, head of our testing and charging division at Interstate. We're going to talk about some new products and some not so new products that are available to help you grow your business through battery testing and charging. So today we'll cover, after our introduction, I'm going to go through a quick discussion about what your opportunity is in your shop already with customers that are in your shop with a failing battery. That is a battery that's failing to meet OE starting specs. We'll talk about testing, temperature considerations, different types of chargers. We're going to introduce our new product, the IB Wave. We'll wrap that up and then we'll have Q&A. So like I said, this is going to be a little bit shorter format. So make sure you're getting those questions in. We'll make sure we can get to them. So, okay, first I'm going to talk a little bit about the opportunity that you have in your shop already with batteries that are failing to meet OE specs. To do this, I'm going to take the screen for a second and I'm going to share a tool that we created. If you have an Interstate seller that works with you, either an RSM or anyway, a seller that works in your area, they can go through this with you and kind of consult with you on what your opportunity is. This is a simple calculator we made. Basically, all you need to know is what your weekly car count is. Let's say for a nice even number, let's say you see 100 cars a week. And industry, probably the best testing percentage in the industry is around 62%. Interstate actually put people in, our own employees in some large dealers, tested every battery we could, and we couldn't test more than 82% because either the customer declined the test or it was underneath upholstery or underneath seats. It's just too hard to get to. So 82% is probably as much as you're ever going to test. But the best our customers test at, typically best in class, is around 62%. So we're going to put in 50% just for a nice round number, and a little more conservative number too. Pardon me, let me type that in. And then closing percentage. We know from studies that when presented with a failing battery test, about 70% of the time, consumers will replace proactively. If they don't replace proactively, that means they're going to get stranded somewhere. And typically they're not presented with a failing battery test. So as you probably know from your own experience, we do get stranded somewhere. But let's put in 60% just for a more conservative number. And when we talk to dealers, about the average profit that they expect to make off a battery is about $50 just for the parts. We do that little calculation, and you can see for a shop that sees 100 cars a week, that's 1,300 cars a month that are already in the shop with a failing battery, right? They're already there. That battery is not getting better. So if you're not testing the battery, you're really doing them a disservice because you're letting them leave with a battery that's on its way out. If you're testing 50%, that means you're going to identify 650 failing batteries. And if you identify those batteries and you tell the customer that the battery failed a test, even if at 60% of the time, that's 390 failing batteries you'll sell at $50 each. That's about $20,000 of profit from your battery sales. Now, if you're not seeing that right now, I mean, these are just national average numbers. About 1 in 4 batteries is going to fail to meet OE specs on the road, right? Because batteries last about 4 years. So this is based on national averages and your shop numbers. If you'd like to have one of these run for yourself, you can email us at ProClinic webinars at interstateibsa.com. No, did I get that right, Mallory? ProClinics at ibsa.com. Sorry. Whew. And we can run this for you. Yeah, and show you what this looks like for your shops. But that's the opportunity, right? They're already in your shop with the failing battery. That battery's not getting better. So we really want to encourage everybody to test more batteries and just communicate the results. You don't need to sell. You just need to let customers know. So with that, Aspen's going to take the screen back and we're going to dive into our presentation. I'm going to introduce the men who need no introduction, but I'm going to introduce them anyway, with a combined battery and automotive experience of, it's got to be over a century now. I know it was close to 100 when we started this, but I bet you're over a century now. Gail and Jeff, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you,
Thank
guys.
you very much. We appreciate it. Were y'all saying I was 100 years old? Is that what you were saying, Kyle?
I'm thinking.
Well, if the shoe is old,
Yeah, exactly.
It's stinky.
it's stinky.
Exactly. Hey, we appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
The opportunity to be here.
Yeah, Mr. Battery and Jeff the Battery Baron. So you guys take it away.
All right. So let's get rolling. So let's talk about the methods of testing. There are many ways that you can test batteries out there. The old school is still the load test. The thing about those, and I've noticed this, Gail, is as I start to get older, I won't say old yet, but as I start to get older, a lot of these testers, if you're looking at the analog, that needle is kind of really hard to see the numbers now. So there are different units out there. The C1600 quick charge is one that's got a digital readout, really a huge plus. But there's analog and there's digital. You want to make sure, though, that if you're using these load testers, a carbon pile, that you are calibrating these things periodically, because these things do get bumped and dropped, hopefully not dropped a whole lot, but the calibration will go out a little. So we want to make sure that when we're testing the product, that we are using a unit that's calibrated. That's a huge, huge plus to be able to do that. Using a calibrated voltmeter as well. So we've always talked to our distributors about making sure that they've got one that is calibrated, and it's not necessarily used in the shop. It's actually within their desk. So that way, it's not getting dropped or beat up or whatever. So it's still in calibration. It's a necessity to make sure that you are testing batteries and getting an accurate reading at the end of it, because you could be potentially sending back batteries that are good just because the calibration was off. So that's, high level on load testing is make sure that you're using the correct CCA value that's either on the battery, hopefully it's on the battery on the label, or what you're seeing within the application guide for a product. So Gail, I want to let you talk a little bit about the conductance side of it, because you've had a big part in all of the conductance that we've dealt with here at Interstate over the years.
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, you're correct. We love digital capability today, and conductance testers are digital. So that helps improve the accuracy and the ease of use and speed and different things versus, the analog. You've got to go 15 seconds. You better have a good digital calibrated meter. You better have this and better have that. And I grew up at Interstate, so to speak, using an analog. Still believe in them because it introduces a actual load on it. But conductance testers are fantastic. A lot of those. They have the ease of use, the speed, and you can test batteries that are not up to 75% state of charge. For example, with a load tester, if you test a battery that's discharged and place 200 amps on it, guess what? It's going to fail.
Right.
So in that situation, you can take a conductance tester and test one that's at a much lower state of charge. So that's a very good rating for it, so to speak, or good ease of operation and usage in that situation.
Yeah, so we want to make sure that we also talk about the conductance in a way that we look at temperature. There's a lot of conductance testers out there that do not take temperature into the equation, that we want to make sure, because there's a difference in below 32 degrees or above 32 degrees, especially here in Texas, where we're approaching 100 degrees. And then if you incorporate the temperature under the hood to the battery, well, that's going to be even worse. So having a conductance tester that's going to be able to take that temperature of the battery itself and put that into the calculations, huge plus.
Oh, absolutely. Some of those temperatures under the hood today in Texas, and starting this summer, the summertime, so to speak, the temperature under the hood can be 200 degrees. And that battery is taking the influence of that temperature into consideration. So make sure if you can, some of the lower level testers and entry level testers, if we have one of their own, that it doesn't take temperature consideration. So the higher end, like the Pulse, will take that into consideration. So just know that how important it is. We're going to talk a little more about that and what effects it has on it in just a moment.
Yeah, and we've got folks that talk about, reading the voltage. Well, guess what? Voltage is just pressure on the battery. So that's not really going to tell you, hey, how good is this thing? Is it going to crank this vehicle up? So voltmeters, great for testing voltage, but that's it.
And another thing, sometimes when the old timey, or back when I started, old timey, but back when I started, 12.66 was a 100% state of charge battery on a flooded lead acid battery. And today, if you have 12.6 on the voltmeter and it's accurate, that's only 75% state of charge. So Keep that in mind, guys, when you're testing batteries, you see 12.6, that's 25% depletion of the capability of that battery to perform at peak.
And in Texas, in the summer, we need that. All right, so let's talk about the temperature and some of the other things that we deal with on the battery itself. So when we look at basically taking this temperature into consideration, so it's taking a lot of calculations, and heat. When you're looking at conductance, heat really plays a major role in the battery. So the higher the temperatures, the better the battery will perform. However, you got a lot more gassing internally on the battery as well. So with that gassing, it's acidic. So it's eating away at the battery. And guess what? You're going to have a little bit of water loss over time as well. So when we look at taking these true readings of the battery using the conductance tester, we want to make sure that all that is put in there for the calculation to get you your right report coming out. We don't want to send a customer on their way if they're going to have a premature failure out there. So we want to make sure that we keep them all informed. And Gail, let you talk about the cold. Not that we ever have cold here in Texas. Doesn't seem like it here anymore.
I've heard about cold. we traveled, when Jeff and I traveled quite a bit, we did a lot of cold. And so extreme cold temperatures can impede the flow of electrons within the battery. As we know, the performance of it, the efficiency of a battery slows down in that scenario. So it can slow down the health of the battery. You won't get the same reading at 40 degrees as you will at 80, that perfect temperature. Jeff and I say that the perfect temperature of batteries is like 80 degrees, but we found that if we had all the batteries in Hawaii, that'd be perfect, right?
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's
But we got to use them all over. So in that situation, temperature is very, very important. Cold and hot temperatures. The cold temperature slow it down so it doesn't get as, won't show as good on that battery, and it'll actually show inflated numbers when you get it too hot.
yeah, I mean, and keep in mind that, you know, the electrolyte freezing temperature. So if you're looking at a battery that's 100% state of charge, it won't freeze until it gets down to like minus 70 degrees. Well, I hope we never experience that. But keep in mind that if a battery is at 50% depth of discharge, it can freeze at upwards of 10 degrees. So we want to make sure everybody understands the, you know, the proper charging parameters as we look at batteries and keeping them where they need to be able to function when you need them. And we're going to talk about the chargers and how vital that is. Not that there's a difference in chargers, right, Gail?
Oh, no, Jeff. You know that as well as I do after working for decades on chargers and with chargers. We have to know a lot about the chargers and how important the importance of it to the battery operation and the longevity of a battery. So talk about a little bit about the maintainer trickle chargers.
So these maintainers or trickle chargers, they're designed to basically, as it says, maintain the battery. So when you look at a battery that is really deeply discharged, your maintainer or trickle charger it's going to take forever if it ever gets the battery up to 100%. So we want to make sure that we're using the proper charger when we're looking at batteries that are deeply discharged or some that just need to stay on trickle charging throughout the winter months. If you got one that you're not using, we've got smart chargers out there. Do what, Gail?
I was just going to say, when you're charging, I mean, when you're storing that marine RV battery or one of those, that's great to have a trickle charger. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. So if they're fully charged, a charger maintainer is fine, or trickle charger. But make sure you're using the right charger for that battery. There are different chemistries out there. There's traditional flooded. There's also flooded automotive and flooded deep cycle. So make sure you've got the right charger that you're using for that battery. Smart chargers are great. And the reason they say they're smart is because they will actually look at the battery, charge it up to 100%, and then it'll maintain that. So it'll go into float mode where it's not. Years ago, there used to be chargers where they wouldn't shut off. And that's the old transformer driven style chargers that are really good. To this day, they still work really well. However, they're not smart enough to turn off once the battery's fully charged. So we want to make sure that we've got the correct charger on there. And I don't think you're going to find any battery company that says, hey, we recommend doing a fast charge. Batteries don't like to be fast charged because what that does is create a lot of heat, and you're going to have off gassing, which if you've ever been around a battery that's gassing, it smells like rotten eggs. And as Gail and I've always said, if you know it wasn't you and it wasn't your buddy, typically it's the battery smelling. So we want to make sure that you're doing it the right way. You're keeping the amperage where it needs to be on charging, and you're effectively and efficiently charging the battery back. So make sure you got the right chemistry charger, whether it's AGM, flooded. EFB is going to be charging at the same rate as your traditional flooded. But look at that. Look at gel product as well. You want to make sure you've got the right charger for the product that you're using. Lithium is going to be the same way. You've got to make sure that you've got a charger designed for lithium if you're going to be doing that as well, which we will be. I guess I shouldn't spoil this, but we'll be introducing some lithium, in the future. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, the only people that love a fast charger or the technician, they want to get it out of the shop, and or the customer needs it right now.
Yeah. Not that we've ever heard that.
No. Can you do it 10 minutes and it's ready?
Yeah. Yeah. I need to go.
Yeah, I need to get my hair done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not
I need to
me,
get my hair done.
not me, but
Sorry, Mike.
I'm
I
out of
do
that
have a-
conversation.
So I think with all that being said, we're going to trip this on over to the next page, and we're going to talk about some of the cars in general and the importance of regular battery testing and maintenance. So, Mike, do you want to start off with this, or do you want us to work in with you on it?
Are you working with me here?
Perfect. So regular battery testing, that is essential to make sure that you have got a happy customer. And as we look at making customers happy, it doesn't matter if we're talking about air filters, tires, brakes, batteries. We want to make sure that we're giving them the information that they need to make a educated guess and make sure, I say guess, they want to make sure that they're making the right choice and decision to get out that shop and not have to worry about breakdowns. Our mechanics out there and technicians, it's really vital for those guys to make sure that they're doing this safely, of course. So using all the precautions when you're looking at replacing batteries or testing product in general there. When you're doing your regular maintenance and testing, we're looking at, let's say we go from a battery that was just installed 3 years ago, and this customer's coming in, every 5 or 6 months and doing their regular maintenance. We went from a brand new battery throughout the years, and we're explaining to them, hey, look, we're doing all these pre-checks for you, make sure everything is still good. So when we finally get down to that point where, let's just say 5 years, we get to the point now where we say, hey, look, we've been doing all these checks on the battery, been looking at your brakes, been looking at tires. Our battery now is getting down to the point where we're saying marginal or replace. And what we want to make sure they understand is this has been good throughout all this time. We have gave you good news, good news, good news. And now we've got to the point where, unfortunately, we've got to have the conversation about we need to replace the battery. So
absolutely.
you want to make sure that you're giving them the information throughout the lifespan of all their times coming in there. That way, you've already built that relationship with the customer, and they're going to make a proactive decision as to, hey, look, I don't want to have my daughter or my wife or my in-laws get stuck out there. Let's go ahead and do that battery replacement now. So that way we don't have to worry about it, leaving them stranded. Nobody wants to get stranded.
No. Jeff, you're exactly right. One of the things Kyle said a while ago in talking about it was you don't have to sell it. Let the machine work for you and tell them what it's saying. Let it encourage him. It's giving them a snapshot of the battery at that point in time. Let it do its work and let it sell.
Absolutely. And yeah, the numbers that we've looked at is, if you're giving people good news 80% of the time, they come in 3-4 times later and you finally give them that marginal or potentially bad news, that trust is there. Like Jeff said, that relationship is there. They're more willing to listen to you at that point, rather than, when you go to test a battery that you can kind of visually maybe know that it's going to fail, and it hasn't been tested before. So that regular schedule, trying to test any battery, every battery that comes into that location, is just a best practice, as far as maintaining proper relationships with your customers and establishing that trust.
Yes, I agree with that. So next we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I think Mike gets to talk about the wave.
Yeah. So thank you.
It's a new wave.
So thank you, Gail and Jeff. Really good information. So we talked earlier about, the temperature being such a crucial part of battery testing. And that's why our pulse tester is the absolute best tester choice out there, especially the ones that we have here at Interstate. Now, that being said, we have had a lot of requests for, entry-level testers in the market to kind of compete with all the other stuff that's out there. And so with that was developed the IVU Wave. So very similar to the pulse in the aspect of it's a pretty basic conductance tester. It does not do the temperature compensation, which most entry-level testers won't. Once you start getting up into that kind of mid to high level tester, that's when you start to see that functionality there. But the IVU Wave is pretty unique. So it's a pretty compact tester that we've got. There's no user interface on it. It's just some pretty basic LED indicators, and a power button, but does all the same tests, everything that the Pulse does. So 6 to 12 volt batteries, 12 to 24 volt system tests. So it'll tell you if the starter or alternator is having any issues. It will also do EV style batteries that are not cranking anything. So for like RV applications, things like that. And the way it is used is it connects through basically a smart device or a phone using either Android or Apple operating systems. And we have an app that we developed with it. So you just download that app, connect to the tester via Bluetooth. The tester does not have any sort of charging cables or docking stations or hubs or anything to connect to. It functions off of the voltage from the battery that it's attached to. And as long as the battery has, I believe it's 1.3 volts on it, it will power up. It will still do the test on the battery at that time. Now, that being said, you can leave it connected to a good, known battery for a while, fully charge up that internal lithium battery, and it'll last for a few weeks, just to the low usage that it gets when it does do the tests. The other unique thing about this one, so this is a purchasable option versus the ED18, the Pulse, kind of our past operations within the leasing. So that was another thing that was requested from the field, is everybody wanted a purchasable option, and the Wave is a great one. So kind of competing with that DHC 777, what is it, the B2Q, which is a very similar design. Definitely some benefits to the Wave versus those, especially with the capability of the cloud-based data reporting that will be functional before the end of this year, very similar to the Pulse. So you guys will be able to see that as well. Very low cost tester because of the minimalistic design on it. So definitely a cost savings versus a lot of our other competing testers in the market at that entry level. Super simple operation. Everything is kind of prompted for you, kind of easy to set up. The connectivity is very good on it. It's not spotty. Everything's pretty self-explanatory. Even the LED indicators on the front, they will flash in certain ways or turn on in certain ways. And if you flip the tester over, it tells you exactly what those things mean, if it's an error code or something going on with the connectivity. Another kind of unique feature with it. So as you can see, it's kind of got a very similar design to the Pulse, rubberized outer coating on it. But on the back side is a magnet. So as far as storage, you can mount it to a toolbox. You can put it inside a cabinet, have nice, easy storage for it. It's very small, about the size of a smartphone itself, and very light. So very easy to maintain, very easy to store, and the cables themselves are field replaceable. They unplug and plug back in. We have those available as well. Due to the fact that it also connects to cell phones, if you have a cellular service, it doesn't need Wi-Fi to transmit the results. You can email or print results just like you can with the Pulse tester. And the unique feature with this one is if you do have cellular service, you can text those results if the customer wants to do that, or if your shop wants to utilize that as far as the normal operation. So again, low cost entry level option for us. We are definitely working on another tester here in the future. But the IV Wave has had some great feedback from the field so far. Everybody loves how fast it operates, how accurate it's been so far. So looking forward to getting that out there. And looking forward to any questions you guys have surrounding that afterwards.
So what you're basically saying is, if I can use it, anybody can use it, right?
That's what it is, Jeff. Built for you, sir.
Just for you, Jeff.
Thank goodness something's out there for me.
All right. Well, with that, we can go ahead and move into the Q&A portion of this webinar. Thank you, everyone, for your engagement in the chat so far. Just want to call out, if you'd like to receive a certificate of completion for attending today's webinar, please email us at proclinics@ivsa.com. I've put our email in the chat, and we can go ahead and get a certificate of completion sent over to you. That being said, we will go ahead and move through some of the requests we've already received. The first question that we got right at the beginning of the webinar was around testing deep cycle versus cranking.
Different, way different. So when you're looking at cranking batteries, you're designed for high amperage output for a very short duration. Deep cycle, of course, low amperage for long drawn out durations. So There is no true conductance tester for true deep cycle batteries. There's not one out there that even comes close. And the reason behind that, you've got different thickness of grid, different paste material, different grid design. Your marine RV battery is a little bit different story because you've got a lot of conductance testers that can actually get pretty close on those. But true deep cycle, there's not a conductance tester out there that's going to work. Load testing, a deep cycle battery with a carbon pile, yes, it'll give you a kind of a prediction, but it won't really give you a true on how long is it actually going to last, because you're looking at once again, a high amperage for 15 seconds. So to get a true reading of a deep cycle battery, there's discharge machines out there that'll run either a 25 amp, 56 or a 75 amp discharge. And if the battery's really good, and let's say it's 120 minutes at 25 amps, it may take 120 minutes to run it. And then it's really good. So those would be the way to really test a deep cycle versus trying to do it with a carbon pile. Gail, you want to add anything on that?
No, not really. You've covered it, I think, in that situation that, there's different parameters for different types of batteries because of the way they're manufactured and utilized. And so the automotive with thin plates looks to produce a lot of current, like you said, and its charge resistance is different than a marine RV battery. So charge those marine RV batteries slower, and also make sure you got it set at the right ranges for a deep cycle, or you got a charger for a deep cycle battery.
Perfect.
Thank you, guys. Next question I have here is, when batteries have boiling water and acid, is that from overcharging?
It can be, or you could have a potentially bad cell. So then it's almost like having a cup of water with a hole in the bottom of it. The charger is trying to fill that battery up, but you've got a bad cell, so it's never going to really fill it up. So that can be your issue there, or it definitely can be an overcharging situation if you're using a 50 or 60 amp charger on a motorcycle battery. That's never good. That's probably an example, but
or if the battery's too hot to start with, yes, and you're trying to charge it, it can be that kind of thing. Like Jeff said, if you've got several cells where water is coming out during the time you're charging it, that's probably because you're in a situation of overheat, overcharge, etc. If one cell is getting hot to the touch, that's typically a bad cell within itself, just 1 out of 6 or whatever.
All right. Another question here. Looks like this one might be for Mike. What is the cost of the Wave battery tester?
$5,000.
Our best offer.
Sorry.
Not quite. Yeah, so the cost out to the dealers right now is approximately about $280. We've set a retail MSRP selling them out of the ABC locations of about $350.
Great. Okay. How does the Wave tester compare to the TOPDON battery testers?
I think I'll answer that for a little bit. I think it's a much quicker tester. The TOPDON, as far as you're showing there, has its own analytics inside, but it doesn't have the capability that Mike was talking about earlier, working with the cloud and with your cell phone, etc. So the Wave is a much more elaborate type tester, and is as accurate or more accurate than that. We did a study recently, and we tested 600 batteries in our lab, and we're all-time testing. So Interstate is all-time running conductance testers against those that are in the industry. And so we had multiple testers in the industry that the Wave and the Pulse fare very, very, very well within comparing to other testers, even more higher end testers with regard to several $1,000s for a tester. So we had good results with that. I hope that helps to answer whoever that was. I didn't see the name.
Yep, hopefully that answers Adam's question. If not, we'll elaborate further. Looks like another question in here. How do you charge a deep cycle 6-volt battery on an electric powered unit?
Are we talking like a scissor lift or something?
We will wait for Ryan to add in some additional context. Ryan, if you'd like to come off mute, feel free to raise your hand as well. He said yes.
Ryan said yes.
Okay. So on those, since it's a 24-volt system, you still got to have all 4 batteries connected in series to get the 24 volts. If you've got one that's bad, I mean, there's no way it's going to completely charge back up. There's not theoretically not a 6-volt deep cycle charger out there that's going to be relatively inexpensive by any means. So you can try a series charger to try to get it boosted up, but I can't guarantee it's going to come all the way back up.
Yeah, and or put it in a 12-volt system, put it 2 in series together or whatever, and use a 12-volt charger that may be more applicable for that type of situation too. Yeah.
Okay, and now we've got a couple questions in here. I'm going to fold them in together. So Jeff, listen closely. All right. Don't skip over anything.
Okay.
Listen.
First part of the question is which is the best tester for the marine industry, thinking deep cycle and cranking. And then someone else had asked separately, what kind of charger is best for AGM? So tester for deep cycle and cranking, and then charger for AGM.
So there's several conductance testers out there that'll work with the marine RV. So the Pulse will do it. You've got several Medtronics, you've got the DHCs. They'll all get pretty close. When you start getting into the deep cycle side of it, though, that's where they get a little off. So the Pulse, some of the Medtronics, the DHCs, those will work. When you are looking at chargers, so Schumacher, Associated, Dual Pro is a great marine charger that does AGM. There is also a Interstate branded out there that works really well on pure lead products. So looking at your pure lead MTZ or even the Optima product, these chargers will work on that. Intersys, I can't remember the part number on it. With Schumacher, there's several ones out there for the marine that do AGM, gel, and flooded. They've got their own different charging algorithms that are based within them. Most of these are smart chargers as well. So once it gets the battery fully charged, it's going to go into float mode. Or maintenance mode, whichever way you want to call it. So there's several out there that will work. As far as Schumacher, SC1304. That's one of them I know, or SSC 1500A. So that's the 2 Schumachers. Dual Pro, several. PS1, PS2, SS1, SS2, SS3. There's a bunch.
And one of the things to remember in that, I've been asked this question, so I'll just intervene, is that how do I differentiate between what is a marine RV cranking type battery versus a deep cycle? If it's got a CCA rating on it, typically you can consider that to be a marine RV or one that you can use a tester on better than one. It's like a golf car battery. It doesn't have a specific CCA. It's ampere hour and it's thick plates, and it's not meant to be a marine RV necessarily. It's a deep cycle battery. I hope that helps also.
Yep, great inputs. Next question here is, what's a dangerous temp level when charging? More specifically, what are the threshold temps to abort charging SLI, AGM, gel lead acid?
When you start getting over 120 degrees, you're getting into that risk factor.
Yeah.
So that's when it starts stinking And if you can't put your hand, the palm of your hand on the side of the battery, that's extremely hot. So you want to discontinue the charging.
Yes, if it's hot potato hot, so to speak. You put the back of your hand on that battery and it's hot potato hot, you better cool it down.
Yep.
All right. Tester shows charge and retest message. We've always used 3 to 4 hours, then retested. What's the right amount of time to charge before retesting that battery?
I would
Man,
say that depends on the battery size, the ampere hour, the rating, a lot of different things. If I have a motorcycle battery, you could be in that 3 to 4 hour range, depending on the state of charge and various other things. But if you've got a group size 65 or H8 battery, it's going to take a while. It's not going to be just a short time situation.
yeah.
So that's a very difficult answer thing. We put some charts together, Jeff and I think you've got some charts.
Yep.
That if it's 5 amps average and some of those things. So contact us about additional information on that.
Okay. When load testing a battery, if the voltage consistently drops under load but is above the 9.61 rating, is it still good?
Yes, because it stayed above 9.6 if it is 70 degrees. Because remember, temperature comes into the equation when you're looking at load testing. So you want to make sure that if the battery's 100 degrees, you're taking that into the equation, which most of these load testers actually have that scale on the side of it. So make sure you take that into consideration.
It's always good to have a temp gun there when you're using that load tester to make sure, because as Jeff and I have found out, if it's, let's say it's 90 degrees, 9.6 is not the correct number for
Right.
load. If it goes down to 9.6 and it's at 90 degrees, 100 degrees, it failed.
Yep.
But if it's 50 degrees, it passed.
Yep.
Or 60 degrees. So temperature plays an important part in that. So take that temp gun, check it out.
Okay. Are car alternators under the same terms as chargers? If you use a flooded and change it to an AGM, do you need to change anything with the charging voltage?
So this is going to depend on the car.
Yeah.
So with today's vehicles that are using computers to control the alternator, you've got to make sure that if it's let's say if it's an EFB, you need to replace it with an EFB. If it's an AGM, you need to replace it with an AGM. If it's a flooded, you need to go back with flooded. So when you look at this type vehicle, if that computer is taking care of the battery and it's looking at amps out, amps in, voltage out, it's going to dictate what that battery gets. And if you've got the wrong battery in there, it's going to have a premature failure on it. So it all falls back on what did the OE battery consist of? Was it AGM? Was it flooded? Or was it EFB? So that's where the determination will come in. Older vehicles, we're not so much worried about it because the alternator is voltage regulated. Your car does not want to see 16 volts, the electronics on it. So you'll never see 16 volts. But when that computer is looking at the in and out of ampere hours and voltages, it's got to make sure it's got the right battery in there. Your BMWs, your Audis, your Volkswagen, your Volvos, a lot of those, if they came OE with AGM, they want AGM back in them. If they came OE with flooded, they want flooded back in it.
You're
EFB,
absolutely right, Jeff. You're absolutely right, Jeff. You know, that the OEs put a lot of time and effort into making sure that they calibrated that charging system to the battery, that type of battery. As an example, we like to have, and it says on the top of a lot of those AGM batteries, the charging system should be 14.4 to 14.8. If you have a 14.1 to 14.3 type alternator within that system, it's probably not going to bring it to full state of charge in that scenario. It's going to undercharge that AGM battery. So make sure it's compatible or comparable to what you're supposed to have in that scenario. Always.
Yeah, and keep in mind, a alternator is not a charger.
Exactly.
So the alternator is designed to take care of the electrical loads once you start that vehicle up. So it's not necessarily a charger per se. It will keep voltage regulated, and it will put a little amperage back into the battery, which will build it up. But keep in mind, when you use that battery, when you start that vehicle up, you're only using 1 to 2%. So once it starts up, the battery did its job. So now it's just basically going to sit there and absorb what's coming back in once it's needed. So it's not, the alternator is not a true charger.
No, absolutely not. Good.
Great answer.
Yeah.
Okay, we only have a couple more questions here in the chat, so be sure to either put additional questions in the chat box, use the Q&A tool, leverage these guys while you have them on the line. As always, you can come off mute and ask your question one-on-one. Just raise your hand and we'll get you taken off mute. With that, one of our final questions is, what's a good tester with temperature options? We are in Wyoming and cold temperature affects us a lot here.
Gail, Mike, y'all want to take it away?
Well, I think we covered that. What it's asking, if cold temperatures, what's the best tester? One that tests with temperature to compensate for that within that scenario. With the pulse charger, it looks at it and it takes a temperature rating of that battery and takes that into consideration. It has a lot of algorithms inside calculating temperature versus the conductivity of the battery, and it then makes its answer given on that temperature, state of charge, and also the capability of that battery to perform. So pulse is a good choice, especially for the money. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, we love the pulse. Next question here is Interstate planning on any replacement batteries for the electrical vehicle market?
I will say not in the near future. And the reason I say that, those things, when you're looking at a 240 volt or even a 500 volt pack, you're talking a lot of storage, and we're not in anything that big yet, because you've got to figure out how you're going to get rid of the old one as well. Recycling on those is not like recycling of a lead acid battery. It's totally different. You can't recycle lithium per se like you would lead acid. So we're not getting into that market yet. We will be offering lithium in a smaller package, but nothing in these large modules like you guys are seeing. Not that big.
Jeff and I and some other of our guys went to the West Coast and went through a great deal of information on that type of electric vehicles, the hybrid vehicles, the batteries for them, etc., and learned a great deal about that. But right now, we're not at that capability to take individual small cells and look at the balance of that compared to the overall battery itself, 500 volts or 250 volts, whatever it may be. Will we in the future? Who knows? But we're
Now,
guidance. Yeah, right now, no.
Yeah, and I can actually speak to that too as well. One of the companies that I come from is one of the first ones to pioneer trying to recycle hybrid batteries, and even after 5 years of research, development, field work, all that kind of stuff, they're still within double-digit return rates because it's just such a complex process to do. So yeah, there's still a lot to learn.
Yeah,
for that as far as the aftermarket is concerned.
The common word within that is Japan. Send them back right now, a lot of them to Japan, because they want a research capability to look at all those batteries, tear them down, look at them, various things. So still learning in that stage.
I saw another question pop up about smaller lithium. And do we mean lithium starting? That will be coming. Not anytime within the next year, but that will be coming because we do have a lot of OEs now that are using lithium cranking batteries. That is another different world as well. We will be looking at the deep cycle to begin with. So I don't want to give anything away, but that will be coming soon. And the automotive will be coming down the road for sure.
Our testers will be able to support it as well.
Yes, exactly.
Just
Jeff,
simple over-the-air updates.
Yep.
And Jeff, you've been testing for a while on some lithiums.
Holy smoke, yes. Yeah, it's been quite a few years, by the way. So we kind of, I hate to say it, but we're a little behind on the market because Gail, when you were here before you retired, we were talking about lithium and how we needed to be in the marketplace. And we should have jumped into it back then. However, knowing what we know now, we are glad that we waited because there's a lot of development that's taken place within the lithium now with the battery monitoring systems that weren't taken into consideration back then. So we're kind of happy that we decided to wait and get into it now. But it's definitely going to be nice.
You're absolutely right. Technology had to catch up with the battery, so to speak, in that scenario, because there was a lot of overheat situations that took place and different types of lithium. When we say lithium, we use that as a generic term, but there's so many different lithiums,
Yep.
Phosphorus, cobalt, etc. There's so many different lithium ion types of lithium batteries. So choosing the right one that works into the very best for that type of situation is very, very important.
And we'll be looking at lithium phosphate, by the way.
Yeah.
The less volatile.
Lots
Yes.
being teased out on this call today, guys. You're spilling all our secrets, probably. That being said, it looks like we've got one more question in here. Again, last call, put your questions in the chat, Q&A tool, let these guys answer them while you have them on the line. Question here, is it okay to charge batteries using a generator or plugged into shore power on an RV?
Yes.
Yes. Again, we emphasize, make sure. Jeff and I worked with the RV industry for many, many years, from motorhomes to smaller ones.
Tow behinds.
Yeah, the tow behind. We worked with a lot of them, but some of those have good chargers, but they have to be set to actually charge it correctly. So make sure when you say a shore power type situation, there's a lot of variances we found in shore power. So make sure that you're getting a good shore power charging with voltage and current.
Yep.
Generators, any of them can charge it with regard to that. Just make sure it's not too high or too low in that scenario on voltage and current. Okay.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. It looks like we've got to the end of those questions. And, this was going to be a shorter call, but here we are at almost an hour.
I was getting ready to say that wasn't so short.
But it was a lot of questions, and that's good. That's what we really like. That's the good stuff. So Jeff, Gail, Mike, thank you for joining us for this. Everybody else, thanks for being on the call, and we'll talk to you for the next one.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thanks everybody.
Bye.